Dagda Eve agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome to Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And we are here running on with our 90-day challenge for videos every day since the start of 2022. I have some awesome questions to answer, and I'm going to do my best to answer them there today. But I would like to, as usual, start with a bit of gratitude and say thank you very much for all of you who have been engaging with the community space here, the comments, the messaging, the liking, subscribing. It's really, really great and really, really appreciate it. It's tricky at times to kind of like grab up the discipline, the motivation to make sure we're turning up. And that's why this challenge has really, really been good for me to make sure that I am turning up where I promise I will always turn up. And the thing is, I don't make promises I don't intend to keep. Flip side to that is I won't make you a promise unless I can 100% guarantee and do it, which means that I don't make many promises. But when I make a promise, it's legit and it's real, and I will do everything I can to do it. So I made a promise to Laura that we would be doing this 90-day challenge, and here we are almost at the end of it. So don't worry, as I've mentioned, if this is one video you're catching, or if you've caught the series or parts of them, at this point, we won't be disappearing from YouTube. We will be doing one video a week from the end of March onwards, and an additional video over in our Irish Pagan School Patreon place. So if you would like to support there, you can, if you'd feel you're interested in doing so. I got an email. I got an email from Noah, and he was asking a couple of small questions, and I thought, that's a really great example for, what I ask. I asked for the community engagement, and it's really great to have received the emails. So thank you very much, Noah, for that. And I've pulled out the questions to bring them down, to encapsulate them, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. And the first question is, what do you say at the opening of your videos? And it took me a moment. I was like, what do I say at the opening of my videos? And then I realized, oh, yeah. I speak Oscuelga. I speak in Irish, and I say Dagda Yiv agus Fáilte. And those are the Irish words for, well, essentially it's Dagda, be with you and welcome. Now, the reason why I do that is a bit of a story, but I'll try and keep it short. The Irish word, the Irish language, again, I have a difficult relationship with it. I miss it a heck of a lot. I now am one of those grown-up people who wishes they had have paid more attention in school, who wishes they had more like focal oscuelga words in Irish to use. I never had fluency. I never kind of dedicated myself to it. And okay, between you and me and the internet, I will confess a sin. I am one of those people who said in the past that Irish was a dead language. Now, gasp, shock, horror, it's a terrible thing. And now I understand why it's a terrible thing. Now I understand the complex layers of emotion that went into that for me. And it is post-colonial trauma, generations of post-colonial trauma. And when we talk about the history of corporal punishment in Ireland within schooling, it's not that far away. My dad was like beaten in school if he didn't do it right, or if he said Irish words, or if he used his left hand instead of his right hand. He had the shit kicked out of him by the Christian Brothers because of it. And so that's real. That's real living trauma in my own family history. Now, again, by the time I was in schooling, corporal punishment had moved out of it. My parents never kind of stood for it. I got my beatings in different ways, but that was schoolyard stuff as opposed to from authority figures or teachers down. So the Irish language then is woven into that trauma. There was this thing, it was called a bata score, and it was a wooden stick that children going to school had to wear around their neck. And any time they used Irish words instead of English words, the teacher or brother or whoever was teaching it would mark the stick. And it was a tally stick. And at the end of every day, you would hand the stick back to the brother or teacher or whatever it is, and you would be whacked with the stick for the count or the tally on that stick. And again, this isn't so far in our past, and it was done by Irish teachers and Irish Christian brothers and stuff to Irish people. So we got to that point of cultural trauma and cultural harm that we were doing it to ourselves because that was the only way you're going to get ahead in this world of English, in this world of, Chongan Sasnuk, the language of the English. And And so it's fucking sad and it's difficult and it's scary. But anyway, the Irish word for hello is dia gwich. So when you say hello to one person, you say dia gwich. And as I have come back to the language of my people now in my older age, one thing I absolutely love doing is exploring the literal translations as opposed to the cultural translation. So when you say dia gwich, or hello, you're not actually just saying the word hello. What you're actually saying is God be with you. Dia is the word for God, and ditch is the verb you, with you. Yeah, so it's gwich is with you. The plural for dia gwich is yiv. So that's what I'm saying. If you're saying hello to multiple people, you would say dia yiv. Now, as I've become a Dagda guy, I'm like, well, I don't go by the Christian God anymore. So in my whimsical reverence, maybe, or also in my vocational commitment to my God, I decided to change my language. I decided to change the words that I actually use. And so if the Irish for hello is actually dia gwich, as in God be with you, then I'm not going to, well, actually, yeah, Laura's opinion in this, Laura changed her language to do yia yiv, as in your gods be with you, which is much more kind of open and broad and allowing for people to have their own expressions of deity and their own relations of deity. From my perspective, everyone can do a bit more Dagda in their life. So what I'm actually saying at the start of these videos is Dagda be with you. And then the word falcha, which is welcome. So it translates to me, what I'm saying then is hello and welcome. But what I'm actually literally saying is Dagda be with you and welcome. So that is Dagda yiv agus falcha. So again, bit of a story. It wasn't actually a short. I don't think I'll ever be able to do a short YouTube video. You know those YouTube reels or those short videos? They're like 3 minutes long. You probably will never find Jon doing one of those. So the next question that we had is a complex question, but it's a very important question. And I'm very, very grateful that you felt comfortable to ask it. So paraphrasing it down here, are there any stories of the Irish gods and goddesses doing gender bending within the lore, as in gender like flipping or transitioning? If so, would that be a possible topic for a video sometime? The reason why I'm answering it here and not doing a full separate video is because there isn't a lot of information around that. There is no specific flipping of genders. What we do have in complex, I'm going to do my best to give you a broad view of it. We have a class done by Shane Broderick in the Irish Pagan School, and Dr. Gillian Kenny actually, about the queerness in the Irish history and lore. And then also from Shane Broderick, it's the structure of society, ancient Irish society. And the ancient Irish society did have kind of clear gender roles in a certain way, or expectations of like where people based on their gender would fit within their roles within society. Wasn't great, wasn't an egalitarian utopia, I'm sorry. But when we come to deities though, there are some differences that we see within the Irish deities as opposed to other pantheons out there. When you think about fertility deities or abundance deities or hospitality deities, a lot of times that kind of content is attributed to or connected to female deities. You then have all of these kind of, the fertility signs of, like, bringing on new life, etc., homely kind of like hearth work and stuff like that. In other tends to be, now again, I'm not going to name other deities because I'm going to stay within my own wheelhouse here. Again, I don't want to misrepresent other deities based on what I know, because I'm not an expert in other pantheons. But oddly enough, within the Irish pantheon, those roles are attributed to a male deity, and it's the Dagda. So if, again, I've talked about it before, like when the Irish gods, it's not just a singular like role or singular kind of task that people would come to and worship or connect with them over. The Irish gods tend to be this multifaceted, multi-talented deity, like figure of deity. So that means that you can connect with them multiple different ways, but there is no separate goddess of fertility. You might look at Boan and say, well, obviously there's the Boyne Valley, the river, and all of the abundance that flows from that river in Ireland. But Boan is not a deity of fertility in herself. the fertility aspects and stuff, actually the life giving, the life supporting and stuff does go to the Dagda. Then also hospitality, maintaining hospitality, that kind of cauldron of abundance. This, like, anyone who comes to him will always go away satisfied, will never go away hungry. We'll always have home space, we'll always have protection, we'll always have warm hearth fires and care. A lot of those things, a lot of those kind of representations tend to be attributed to female deities in other pantheons. In the same way that if you look at other pantheons, you find the realms or dominions of war and prophecy and poetry going to male deities. In the Irish pantheon, it's the Morrigan. And so the Morrigan is listed as a female deity. Now, again, this is where I'm going to move a little bit further into answering your question, because the Morrigan is 100% a shapeshifter. But shapeshifting is shapeshifting. So again, but just to, this kind of classic idea of like war and those areas of war, you have Athena in the Greek pantheon. I think she's war. No, she's wisdom. But there is a martial aspect to her faith and her belief, as far as I understand. But not in the same way that, the Morrigan is. So within the roles and the structures, there might be clear gender roles as defined by the cultural narrative, but when we look at the deities themselves, there are differences. There are kind of some roles that you might attribute to one gender, but are actually with a different gender. Now, shapeshifting. You mentioned shapeshifting in your question. Shapeshifting in the stories, we find most commonly them, like the Morrigan, for example, turning into various animals. But it is listed that each time she transforms, she turns into a heifer, which is a female cow, a she-wolf to cause the stampede against Cuchulainn, and an eel. I don't think it defines gender for that one. But again, heifer, there's that female element. The she-wolf, it's listed as a she-wolf, not just a wolf. So there is that gender involved with that. But we do have another kind of aspect or another form of the Marnia, as in the goddesses, the collection, which is the Bive. And the Bive is the kind of hooded scald crow goddess, the kind of carrion goddess, the aftermath of battle goddess kind of aspect. And now this might be more a literary kind of thing as opposed to an actual representation of gender flipping, but we do have another character in the lore as Bove Jarrig. Bove Jarrig is listed as king of Munster, and he's one of the sons of the Dagda. Now, he is son of Dagda. Now, Bove, B-O-D-B, is pretty much the same spelling as Bive, B-A-D-B. And the O and the A in Irish, like old Irish kind of linguistic circumstances, were interchangeable. So you could spell Bive, B-O-B-A, either way. So whether that is indicative of the Bive being Bove Jarrig, and there is that kind of aspect of gender fluidity, like gender flipping or switching or changing. Again, it's not enough to say for sure. It's not enough for me to say, yes, 100% certainty. I can't give you that kind of response. And I wouldn't want to give you that response because it's not something that we can really stand over. But as a thought process, as worth exploring, it's absolutely worth exploring. It's worth kind of having those questions and looking into the lore to try and find those representations. And again, as I've mentioned in some of my other videos, we haven't translated everything. There's a heck of a lot of content, that we still have not got translated out because it's in Old Irish. It's not even in Middle Irish. Like, Middle Irish is easier to translate, but some of the older stuff is Old Irish, and that's pretty tricky and unique, which is why we have people like Morgan Daimler as an absolute gem. Isolde Carmody, an absolute legend for their ability to translate the older form and structure of Irish. And both of them will also say that, the spelling can sometimes be fluid or different or changeable. So we can't say that the genders were fluid or changeable, but we can say that the spelling was fluid and changeable from a linguistic point of view. But to bring it back to that concept of shape-shifting, if you can control your form to such a degree that you can alter it and shift it and change it in any way that you choose, it's not outside the realm of possibility or ability for a deity to choose a different gender if they wanted to. So we have the Morrigan, again, in the Ulster cycle, this whole, the Taun appearing to Cuchulainn. At one point, she appears as a beautiful young woman, and another point in the story, she appears as a haggard old crone with 3 wounds upon her, which were the wounds that he actually placed upon the heifer, the she-wolf, and the eel. So it doesn't have to be specifically based on gender, but there is a lot of kind of complexity around that. And I hope that answers in some way or informs some way your quest for exploring that lore. So I do wish you all the best with that. Thank you very much. The next question that you had was about Irish paganism and with it being a closed practice. So I'm going to read out the specifics on this one just to give a bit more clarity. Do you believe that the Irish deities and spirits prefer their people to stay within Irish tradition and religious practices only? I'm wanting basically to find out whether an eclectic practice that involves Irish deities and spirits and deities and spirits from other parts of the world will be respectful to those native to Ireland. You did go into a bit more information around it, like of comparatives, like, you know, and it's a question that we get commonly enough, you know, hey, I have altar space. Can I put like Freya and the Morrigan on it? You know, can I put Balder and Dagda in the same space? You know, hey, I have a Hecate space. Is it cool if I, like, you know, slide Morrigan in there? You know, how will they interact? How are they going to interact with each other? Can they interact with each other? Is it disrespectful? Does one need to be a more prominent or a primary deity, a primary relationship, and then the others? It's a complex one. It really, really is. But I think there are aspects of the Irish spirituality that are closed traditions, that there are kind of cultural elements that are very, very important to take on board when you're considering Irish spirituality and Irish paganism. Now, that's the whole area of closed practice is a tricky one, you know, because there are some nations, some kind of cultures which have a very specifically strictly closed, and like unless you're part of the tribe, unless you're part of the Tua or the practice, the descendants, then you have no right to access that teaching and that learning. The thing with Irish spirituality and Irish paganism is that not only was it specifically targeted for eradication by our multiple levels of colonizer, from Christianity through the English, through Normans, through all of it, at the same time, the Irish people were scattered all over the world. Our tribe kind of went everywhere all over the world. And so it's hard to, like, you can't exactly say that you have a closed tradition when there are descendants of Irish people everywhere. Now, what it really means is that you can't just take from Irish history, lore, spirituality without the cultural context, without being able to immerse yourself in the cultural identity of being Irish, not just the historical identity of Irish that your ancestors may have come through, but also the living identity of Irish now. And that's where we talk about this idea of respect and right relationship. So someone who is working within an Irish spiritual practice who isn't at least conscious of what's going on in the real Ireland today is not really finding true depths around their spirituality. They're kind of taking the top end of what they want, to cherry picking their spiritual practices from multiple different sources just to justify their own sense of spiritual growth or spiritual sensitivity. Now, I've touched on spiritual sensitivity in another video. I've touched on spiritual sensibility in another video. But this idea of core equivalence, this core fundamental right relationship, is what it really has to come back to. And where each of us is a multifaceted individual. You know, hey, I might be the talky guy, but I'm also introverted. You know, I might be good at certain things, but I'm also not great at other things, you know, but we as ourselves do look to our spiritual growth and our spiritual life to help us, to inspire us, to challenge us, to grow in what ways we need to grow. And the challenge that sometimes comes up is that when the growth gets difficult, it can be hard to stay the course. When the connection grows to a certain point and the revelations are not like coming every 5 minutes because you've grown to a certain level of awareness, staying with that relationship, staying to push to the deeper levels of connection, the deeper levels of learning, can be difficult. And that's where, in my experience, in my opinion, I have seen other people move to other relationships or move to other, you know, deities or spirits or connections because they want to chase that epiphany experience. They want to chase that kind of sudden leaps of growth in finding those new connections. So I think, to pull it back to your question there as best I can, altar space is always something you'll have to figure out for yourself. And I think if you're not investing enough in the relationships with the deities, they will let you know. But also then, you know, if you're trying to force connection or force spaces with deities, they will also let you know. So it is about building that comfort so that when you do go to your altar space for your worships or your practices, it's not a catastrophic collage of experience. Like I work with a solo deity, but that doesn't mean I'm not aware of the rest of them, and it doesn't mean the rest of them don't turn up. You know, Bridget wanders past, especially if I'm being cheeky about it. You know, I live with a Morrigan priest. I walk past Morrigan altars. Maeve is on the altar. Manana is on the altar. I know them all, but I choose to work with one. And that's my personal choice for how I'm choosing to grow. That doesn't mean that I don't have connections with other ones, but the idea that I would come to my altar space and have 4 or 5 different deities who have work for me or have something that I need to give to them, it's a cacophony at times. So that's my personal practice, but other people have different ways of doing it. And I think that kind of segues into the next question that you kind of have, which is this concept. You mentioned it there, working for, working with, and worshiping. So you're asking for my thoughts on those 3 kind of terms, because some people, myself and Laura, refer to ourselves as working for. I work for the deity, Laura works for the Morrigan. And some people in the practice say that they work with a particular deity or work with multiple deities. And then some people say that they worship a deity or worship multiple deities. I did a video on working with, and this concept of working was a question that came up before, and it's in the feeds there. But kind of TLD, or when we say work for, both Laura and myself mean vocation, in that we have a formal agreement, a formal arrangement of service for the deity's interests. Working with tends to be, you have a partnership, you have a collaboration with the deities. Worship is, you know, you make offerings, you kind of are building that connection of worship and connection with deities, but it might not be something that you have a purpose to work towards or a vocation to work for. So those are kind of 3 stages there, if that makes sense. And every stage is valid. Every stage has its place. You know, there is no, you know, oh, well, I work for, so therefore I'm a higher. That is bullshit. Anyone who tries to start positioning themselves either with social credit or spiritual credit or whatever, or build hierarchy around it, if you're not part of their hierarchical structure, if you're not part of their religious practices, or like, okay, so there are some spiritual paths out there that have a hierarchical structure, and that's important for building that connection with the deities, building that connection with spirit, and going forward there. But if you're not part of that structure and someone starts to try and position themselves based on their relationship, well, I know the deity better than you do, I don't care. That's not what it really should be. There should be no competition. It should be about collaboration. And that's one thing that we always say here as well. You know, some people turn to us and say, oh, well, there's other people setting up kind of pagan schools, there's other people setting up. And it's like, I'm fucking delighted. Both Laura and I built the Irish Pagan School because we needed it and it didn't exist. So the more people who step into that role, the more people who build, then the greater, like the rising tide lifts all boats. You know, we're community, not competition, is our big focus. And I think when we're talking about this working with and worship and relationships, you know, it is about what works for you on your own personal spiritual journey, because no matter which way you go, every single one of us is on our own personal spiritual journey. You can take inspiration from other people, you can take teaching and learning from other people, you might take teaching and learning from me in these videos, okay, but it's still your journey. At the end of the day, you're the person who has to, you know, answer to yourself when you're not looking after yourself. You're the one who has to answer to your deities when you're not working on and keeping the balance of that relationship. And I think that's why I use the word relationship. You know, it is about a back and forward, like having a friendship with the Dagda. In fact, the Milesians had to have a friendship with the Dagda. It's listed as a friendship with the Dagda to prevent Ireland turning into a wasteland when they took over from the Tuatha Dé Danann. You know, that didn't mean worship. That didn't mean like they didn't have to convert to following the Dagda. They had to have a friendship with him in order to establish safety, security, and, you know, abundance for their people. And so as we build these relationships, as you have multiple relationships, you can have multiple friendships. You know, I'm blessed to have multiple acquaintances. I am doubly blessed to have a couple of close best friends. And it is similar when we talk about deities. You know, I have one best friend deity that I work for. I have acquaintances with many other deities and some deities outside of my own pantheon. Now, I don't experience any jealousy. I don't experience any conflict. But again, I'm not dedicating space. I'm not a dedicant. I'm not a devotee of multiple different deities. So I don't have the experience of different deities placing expectation on me. And I think that's where it really comes back to building yourself. Like that video I did about spiritual sensitivity, sensibility, and then crucially important, personal sovereignty, means that as you move into those relationships, as you move into the multiple relationships, you're able to still stay true to yourself, still stay true to, you know, what it is that is building you up and keeping you going on your growth. Deep breath, Jon. You never guess I was asthmatic, would you? Okay. Thank you very much, Noah. I really appreciate your questions, and I really hope that has answered them. And to anyone else here who's kind of come through or found this video, you know, there's so many different things that we do need to look after when we're looking after ourselves and looking after our relationships, particularly if we're in a polytheism. Like, it's not monotheism, one God, it's polytheism. It's understanding that there are multiple gods. So in the same way that you might have, you know, you don't have one friendship out there, you have multiple friendships. Or even, you know, you may have a monogamous relationship, a single relationship, or you might have a polyamorous relationship with multiple relationships and multiple partners. All of them are valid, and all of them deserve the same amount of respect and interaction. Also, if your polyamory is not engaging, connecting, and treating each relationship with equivalent value and respect, then your polyamory is not polyamory and you're doing it wrong. Again, from my outside perspective on that, and from having multiple poly friends and family, and understanding, like, having learned a heck of a lot in my short time kind of interacting and growing outside of my own programming, it has to be about communication. It has to be about respect, has to be about consent, and has to be about sharing in a relationship and working on the relationship to maintain that, whether it is with other people or whether it is with spirits, guides, guardians, or gods. Oh, turned into a bit of a rant there, but thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for enjoying the video. If it is something you feel you want to hit the like for, that's great. I would appreciate it. If you have comments on it, I'd really love to hear your perspectives and your opinions on it. And as mentioned, you know, we will be slowing down, but not going away from the end of the month on the YouTube. Do make sure you're on the mailing list as well, so you won't miss out. Look after yourself, take care of yourself, and until next time, slán, which is the Irish word for goodbye.